Some stories begin with a trumpet. This one begins at the piano, hands steady, mind sharp, listening for what a man could become. Lillian Lil Hardin Armstrong didn't just play jazz, she built pathways through it, composing, leading, and teaching Louis Armstrong how to carry greatness like it belonged to him.
There's a trace of her.
We all know Louis Armstrong, but do you know who helped make him Louis Armstrong? In the smoke and glare of early Chicago jazz, Lillian Lil Hardin Armstrong was writing, playing, leading, and polishing a raw talent into a star. Born Lillian Hardin on February 3, 1898, Lil's roots traced back to resilience. Her grandmother, Priscilla Martin, had been born into slavery in Mississippi, and the family moved to Memphis by mule-drawn wagons seeking a new life. Lil learned hymns and classical pieces at the piano as a child, trained at Fisk University, and moved to Chicago in 1918 with a musical education and a fierce determination. She worked as a sheet music demonstrator. She slid into Chicago's cabaret and dreamland scenes, and she brought to every room something many of her contemporaries recognized: craft, class, and a way of thinking about music as both art and profession. Then King Oliver's Creole Jazz Band arrived on the scene, and with it, a young cornetist from New Orleans, Louis Armstrong. The storybooks will tell you how Louis changed jazz, but Lil changed Louis. When Louis came to Chicago, Lil remembered him as too country for the city. He showed up with a hairstyle and clothes she thought were out of place in Chicago's nightlife. Lil did what she always did. She taught. She took him shopping. She got rid of his bangs, updated his wardrobe, sharpened his stage presence. She even worked with him on classical music through a German teacher in Chicago, helping him widen his musical vocabulary. But it wasn't only clothes and drills. Lil pushed Louis to manage his money, to assert himself on the bandstand and in the studio. She saw him not as a supporting player, but as a star in his own right, and her pressure helped convince him to leave Oliver's band and pursue his own path. If you listen to those early Hot 5 recordings, the ones that reshaped jazz, you'll hear Lil at the piano right there on some of the first sessions that made Louis a household name. Lil was a musician of her own merit. She composed and arranged songs like Struttin' with Some Barbecue, Just for a Thrill, later a hit for Ray Charles, Don't Jive Me, and Bad Boy. In the 1930s, she led an all-girl orchestra and fronted bands that broadcast on NBC. She recorded for Decca and later Riverside, performed with Red Allen, backed Alberta Hunter, and continued to reinvent herself, even taking a tailoring course in the 1940s and sewing a tuxedo for Louis as a graduation project. And yet Lil's story is bittersweet. In the late 1920s and into the 1930s, differences over class, money, and ambition strained her marriage to Louis. They separated in 1931, divorced in 1938. She sometimes performed under the billing Mrs. Louis Armstrong, a reflection of the era's gendered expectations, even as she led her own bands and made her own music. It's important to say this plainly. Lil Hardin Armstrong's life and legacy were shaped by the realities of being a Black woman in early 20th century America. Historians note that race and gender limited opportunities, visibility, and long-term recognition for countless artists like Lil. She had tremendous talent, an iron will, and a record of leadership and composition that should have translated into wider fame and financial security. That it didn't, in the same way it did for some of her male peers, tells us as much about the times as it does about the woman herself. In later years, she tried to tell her own story. She began an autobiography, recording her memories for Riverside, but delayed full publication until after Louis's death. And when Louis died in 1971, Lil traveled to New York for his funeral. A month later, while performing at a televised memorial concert for him in Chicago, she collapsed at the piano and died of a heart attack on the way to the hospital. After her funeral, letters and an unfinished manuscript disappeared from her home. She was interred at Lincoln Cemetery in Illinois. Lil Hardin Armstrong's influence endures. Beyond the wardrobe and the grooming stories, important as they are, she sharpened a musical mind, put structure around raw talent, and insisted that artistry be paired with dignity and craft. Her compositions still speak. Her leadership paved the way for women in jazz. In 2014, long after her death, she was inducted into the Memphis Music Hall of Fame, a belated but meaningful recognition. So when we celebrate Louis Armstrong's rise, let's also honor Lil, the woman who taught him more than notes, who taught him how to stand in the world with style and intention. Her life is a reminder of the gifts Black women have brought to our culture: talent, mentorship, and the quiet insistence that excellence be claimed.